Margaux. When you say it, it just sounds smooth, suave, sophisticated. And when you say Margaux Bordeaux, it sounds even more so. And when you realize that Margaux and Bordeaux was the favorite wine region of the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, well, it makes it even more mysterious, even more intriguing. My name is John Honest. I'm a certified sommelier, and in this video, I'm going to make Margaux fun and easy for you, and I'm going to introduce you to one of Thomas Jefferson's favorite wines from Margaux that is still around today. All right, whenever I like to talk about a wine region, I always like to start with geography. If you know where it is and you know what the climate is, then you can get a good idea of the characteristics of the grape and the wine that you're going to drink in the glass. Because that's what we're here for. It's fun to study wine regions. It's fun to talk about soils and climates and geography and Thomas Jefferson and all the stuff that goes into wine. But the real reason that we're here is to find ourselves a really unique, enjoyable bottle of wine. And in Margaux, we are going to find one. So the geography of Margaux, it is a left bank appellation, which means that as you look at a map of Bordeaux, it is to the left, the west of the Gironde estuary. And so Margaux is going to be the southernmost of the classified appellations. So you're going to have St. Estephe, you have Paulliac, you'll have St. Julien, and then you'll have Margaux, which is the biggest one, and it is right on the Gironde estuary. This is important because it's going to tell us what the climate is. So in Bordeaux in general, the climate is maritime, which means it's on the coast and which means it rains like hell. So you don't get too much of what's called a diurnal shift, where it's cold at night and warm in the day, which means that it preserves acidity while the grapes ripen. The temperature in Bordeaux is in the left bank of Bordeaux is a little more consistent throughout the year, but the thing that you have to know and understand about the climate is it rains a lot there. Rain can be both good and bad. The grapes obviously need rain so that they can take up the nutrients and ripen, but if you get too much rain, it gets dilute. And if you get a lot of rain, it gets humid, and what do you get? You get disease pressure, you get gray rot, you get mold, and it'll wipe out the vineyards. Luckily, there is a very clever hedge to that in Bordeaux, which I'll tell you about. So, talking about what makes Margaux very unique is now we're getting into the soil here. The soil is mostly gravel, but it also has a lot of clay and limestone in it. And this is going to make it unique because the grape that grows best in gravel is Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, why is that? Cabernet Sauvignon is a thick-skinned, late-ripening grape, which means it needs a lot of heat energy in order to ripen. If it's cloudy all the time, it's going to be a little bit rough. But what gravel soils do is they actually take the sunlight and they reflect it back up into the grapes so that they develop their signature flavors and they fully ripen. Now, very interestingly, in the 1600s, well before Thomas Jefferson was even born, the Dutch drained the marshlands of Bordeaux because they were great canal builders. They loved to build canals. By the way, Abraham Lincoln was a big fan of that too. Canals, canals, canals. So we're talking about the Dutch here. And so they drained Bordeaux. And when they drained Bordeaux, what they discovered were these gigantic mounds of gravel called croupes. And they didn't really know what they were at the time, but what the French discovered as they began to take possession of Bordeaux was that Cabernet Sauvignon grows on these gravel mounds, these croupes, like they do in no other place. Now, they discovered it, but they actually didn't really know why until a few decades ago, when a study by the University of Bordeaux over 10 years discovered that what these gravel croupes do, like no other place in the world, is they drain all the water that comes from all the rain that comes in. And so they drain the water away so the vines don't get waterlogged. And when they drain the water away, it puts water stress on the vines. And when you stress the vine, it directs all its energy to the grape to produce those wonderful signature flavors. And so the croupes in Bordeaux, St. Estephe, particularly Paulliac, St. Julien, and some in Margaux are the key to some of the best Cabernet Sauvignon in the world. It reflects the heat energy there, and it drains the soil and puts exactly the right amount of water stress on the grapes. You cannot duplicate that anywhere in the world. Now, in Margaux, you have some of the shallowest croupes. So what that's going to do is it's going to limit the amount of Cabernet Sauvignon that's grown. Now, remember that I said that Bordeaux was a maritime climate and it had a lot of risk. So you get risk of frost. You get risk of too much rain. You get risk of humidity and disease pressure. There's a lot of risks there. So when you have risk, what do? You buy insurance. So the insurance in Bordeaux is actually quite interesting. Now, putting aside the fact that every chateau is owned by an insurance company now, because it's pretty darn expensive. But this is a different kind of insurance. What it is called Encepagement. And what that means is it's the percentage of the vineyard that's planted to each varietal. So a percentage is planted to Cabernet Sauvignon, a percentage is planted to Merlot, a percentage is planted to Cab Franc, to Petit Verdot. And so if you get a spring frost that comes in and wipes out a more early ripening variety, you still got a late ripening variety. If you have gray rot that comes in and rams it hard, if you get rain at harvest, if you get all of this, what that does is it mitigates the risk, because then I can have a little bit of a different blend of grapes at the same time. All Bordeaux on the left bank are going to be blends for that, for insurance purposes. But the other reason is what they discovered, it's not just for insurance purpose, it's what makes these wines absolutely magical. There's nothing I love more than a good blend. And so Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cab Franc, all blended in the right proportions can produce insurance, and they can produce both some amazing wines as well. And so the winemaker decides that they're going to go ahead and harvest, and they're going to make the wine. Based on that year's vintage, that will decide the proportion of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, maybe a little Malbec, but you're not going to see that much, or Cab Franc that's going to go into the blend. So part of the magic of Bordeaux is, due to the vintage, the encepagement, the makeup of the varietal in the wine, changes from year to year. Now, they can stay consistent between chateaux. So what I mean is like, say, if you go over to the right bank, like Chateau Palmer, you may have 90% Merlot, 10% Cab Franc one year. You may have 93% Merlot, 7% Cab Franc. So there's these minor variations, but they make a big difference. Now, what's the unique thing about Margaux, and why did Thomas Jefferson fall in love with it so much? Well, in Margaux, you have a lot more clay soils, and Merlot grows very well in clay. Merlot is a sugar machine. It produces sugar bombs. And so you want to tamp down on it, because sugar leads to high alcohol. It can lead to lower acid. It can lead to flabbiness. So Merlot grows well in great clay and limestone soils. So in Margaux, there's a lot more clay and limestone than there is gravel, even though Cabernet Sauvignon grows there. Grows very well there. So if you look up north in Paulliac or something, you're going to get wines that may be 80-some-odd% Cabernet Sauvignon. This wine, which the chateau that Thomas Jefferson visited, Chateau Kirwan, one of them, this wine is actually only 45% Cabernet Sauvignon. I believe it's about 30% Merlot, and you can check my math, but it's about 15% Cab Franc and 15% Petit Verdot. So this is going to be a true blend. And that's one of the things that makes the Margaux wines very unique and gives them a much different characteristic than their neighbors to the north. Now, Thomas Jefferson, when he was the American minister to France from 1784 to 89, I believe, during the Revolutionary War, he kind of used his position to take a tour of the area. Why not? I would. And his favorite region was Margaux in France. Thomas Jefferson was America's first enophile, first serious wine collector, and he took very detailed notes on the growing techniques, the wine that he bought, all his observations, which are still preserved to this day. And the one thing he noted about Margaux, the best wines come from Margaux, he said. Chateau Margaux was his favorite one. And actually, I believe it was in 1787, 88, he actually ordered 180 bottles of Chateau Margaux right from the chateau, not from the middleman, because he knew they would monkey with it and they might adulterate the wine a little bit. He wanted it pure. 180 bottles of the 1784 vintage of Chateau Margaux, which was delivered to his residence in Paris and then eventually delivered to the United States, probably in the front part of the hull of the ship to keep it cool. But his observation about Margaux was this. He said that the working men, the laborers who worked in the fields and in the wineries, they ate good white bread, good French bread, where the lesser producers, they were consigned to harder black bread. So because they were eating white bread, he knew that they could pay them a lot more because they were making so much more money. So Thomas Jefferson had a great appreciation for Margaux. So let's talk about what we're going to get out of this wine. Then we're going to open it. Then we're going to taste it. So what Margaux is known for it's described as a more feminine wine. It's described as softer, a little more velvety with silky tannins, and that's going to come from the higher percentage of Merlot in there. And with a little bit of Cab Franc in there and some Cabernet Sauvignon, what it's also known for is they're known for their perfumes, their aromas. And so you're going to get violets, you're going to get purple flowers on the nose of a Margaux. But don't think that these are simple wines. They can be very complex. And while you can drink them young, which is quite nice, they can go for years and years and years and years. And so the unique character of Margaux, think softer, think silkier, think more feminine, and more complex because they have a very unique blend. So, all right, enough talking. Let's drink. I'm going to take my wine key here. We're going to open a bottle of Chateau Kirwan 2018. So this has been aged for about 7 years now, which for this Chateau is pretty good. We don't have to wait 27 years to drink this stuff. We're going to drink it now. And the interesting thing about this wine, what we're looking for is everything is not an equal proportion, but instead of, like I said, being 70% Cabernet Sauvignon, this is only 43, 48%, so it's a much lower proportion. So instead of featuring like a Paulliac, which would be a Cabernet Sauvignon that is supported by the wines, this really is a true blend. And what I love about blends, is when you hit glass number 2, they all kind of start to come together like ingredients in making a cookie. And when you hit glass 3 and they've come together, they just kind of seep into your mind and begin to take you on this just wonderful journey. And so the one thing about a wine with blends like this is that the first taste and the last taste are vastly different. And that's part of the magic of Bordeaux. All right, let's go ahead and open this. And I am going to taste this in a wide bowl Bordeaux glass. In this case, it's going to have enough of a surface area to open up very quickly, but I'm also going to get those beautiful violet aromas. That's what we're going to look for on this wine. I haven't tasted this one before, but that's the thing that I'm going to look for. Violet aromas, black fruits, blackberry, black currant, black cherry, cassis if you want to get fancy. Interesting, what you're also going to get from the soil too is you're going to get graphite. Left Bank Bordeaux's are very well known for the taste of graphite, pencil lead in their wines. It's not going to be something that's going to jump out and smack you in the face, but it's an undercurrent that kind of gives the wine structure. I also get a few red fruits in here from the Merlot as well because it's such a high percentage. But there's one thing we can do. We can talk about the wine, or we can properly open it and we can actually taste it. So it looks like we got a good cork here. This was a 2018. I would expect it. So we got a nice color on the cork. I can already smell the aroma. Have a look. There we go. Chateau Kirwan 2018. All right. Let's pour a sip and see what we got. Oh, that's a nice, beautiful, dark wine like we would expect. Let's give it a swirl. Have a look at the glass. Wow, that almost seems like it's glowing a little bit. I always love wines that seem like they're a little bit irradiated, that they've got some life in them. Yeah, that I get a lot of plum and I get a lot of blackberry, but they're all lifted on these violet flowers. Yep, and the graphite's there. The graphite is right there. I wouldn't have expected it on the nose, but the graphite is there. So this is definitely a Margaux. Beautiful perfume. Let's see what the palate is. I know, for editing purposes, I should swallow this stuff faster and cut this part out, but oh my God, I just want to revel in this wine. Feminine is the right word for it, but I really pick up on the Merlot. Everything is very well integrated. And remember, this is the first sip. As I go through this bottle, it's going to change. So I do get some of the red fruits in there. I get some of the red plum on top of the blackberry. I get both black cherry and red cherry, and I can see it's all gonna come together. I can still get the disparate parts of the blend, but as I go through this bottle and everything oxygenates, it's just gonna come together beautifully. So, Thomas Jefferson himself visited Chateau Kirwan, and just based on one taste off of this beautiful Margaux, I would say that this wine is worthy of Thomas Jefferson. So, enjoy Margaux and Chateau Kirwan 2018.